Welcome to the podcast that questions everything, from conspiracies to philosophy, from science to religion. We will be looking at the construct of the illusion, and as always, we will question everything. Hello and welcome to another Everything's an Illusion podcast where we question everything. Again, we are joined by the excellent bearded master of sci-fi, Mr. Greg Andrew.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing? How you doing, Rob?
Oh, not bad, you know, just living the podcaster's dream.
That's what it's all about.
So in this episode, we have a full brim-packed episode full of awesomeness. So I'll just run through the topics for the good listeners. We're going to discuss Making a Murderer, the Netflix TV show. We're going to look at Iceland, how they're leading away, how they jailed the bankers. The third topic, the Writer's Challenge. 4, the new planet that's been discovered. 5 is life expectancy and living your dreams. 6, the power of social media is the power to share. And 7, Donald J. Trump. So this is pondering your navel, back and forth. Both of us, if you've never heard one of our podcasts, both of us back and forth on these topics. We'll give our piece and sit back and enjoy. Okay, Greg, Making a Murderer. What's your thoughts on this fantastic piece of Netflix TV docu-series, docudrama?
Well, what's just quite interesting is we have a wee quick chat before the podcast and we kind of talk about maybe things we're going to discuss, and then we kind of make things up as we go. But this was a kind of subject I think we've both kind of wanted to cover this week. I think it's one of those phenomenons that happen every now and then, and that, to be fair, happening quite a lot more now with an expanded social media that we'll come on to later on. So I hadn't seen too much about it. I think the series itself premiered on Netflix just at the end of December, and then over the Christmas period and the holidays built up a wee bit of momentum. Then I would say the first week in January is when it really became international success for Netflix as a TV programme that they've commissioned or bought in and created, and has opened up a whole can of worms looking at the American justice system, and of course focuses on the Stephen Avery second big case of his in his life, and that was the murder of Teresa Halbach. And it's all over social media now, Facebook, Twitter, lots of people running articles. A lot of people who are involved in it are coming forward and having their say on the case, and it's just really interesting for me personally, looking at the American justice system as it stands for the last 30 years and how things that seem to be miscarriages of justice, especially in this case, at least the first time, have been carried out. I don't know, how did you come across the programme, Rob?
I came across it through yourself, personal messaging me on Facebook saying, you've got to check this out.
Yeah.
So I did, and I'm glad I checked it out, because I essentially watched the 10 episodes in, say, 2 evenings. And, from many perspectives, obviously, for saying a look at the American justice system, that was really interesting. The whole idea of, that could happen to you. Freedom is as deep as your wallet, in a sense. And then from the perspective of actual filmmaking, from a documentary perspective, it was, I thought, quite a good piece of the fact that they used all that kind of old footage. I'd never have thought that they had that much footage filmed on a case, but it's amazing that they just that all that stuff is archived and accessible. Obviously they had to buy it or rent it off all the different channels, but amazing that they got that amount of tape from home movies. And
I think just before we go any further, we have I don't know how many of our million listeners it is, we should maybe just say, if you haven't seen Making a Murderer, this would be a good time to say spoiler alert. So I think me and you will probably get into nitty gritty bits and exact parts within the 10-hour long series.
So for that then, Greg,
just looking out for the listeners there, Rob.
There is a poster on the website, and there's also on the Facebook, etc., which has the timing. So I don't know what it is just now, but it'll tell you on the poster or on the website, Making a Murderer from 2 minutes to 24 minutes. Yeah. So if you want to skip it, just go to the wherever it tells you. Aye. So
once again, I think we can put our hands up and safely say spoiler alert coming.
Yep.
Skip ahead. We from now on take no liability in any spoilers that come forth. He clears himself because, as we say, it is a thing people are discovering every day, and they are binge watching it, which is again another part of the story that shows how people are interacting with the media these days. The chance to take this 10 hours documentary and take that information in, and as you say, a couple of nights over. I think me and my wife watched it over the course of 3 or 4 nights just before we went to bed, and then I was getting up late for work because I was watching just one more episode, that kind of vibe. But I don't know if you want me to go through the kind of timeline of what happened in the case. If you've got a good timeline there.
My timeline, I've just recently watched it. My timeline, I'm not very good with the names, but I can't go through my timeline without shouting about what actually...
Yeah, your emotional instinct that came up at that time.
Aye, the thing which is...
yeah,
we'll talk about...
Yeah, as we go through
it. I believe there's a piece missing, but if you run through your...
Right, so I think the original intent of the documentary makers, they were doing a piece on a miscarriage of justice that had happened. And this miscarriage of justice had happened to Mr. Stephen Avery, a man described in the documentary as a below average intelligence, 70 IQ, a local scrap dealer from Manitowoc County.
Manitowoc.
Is that Minnesota? Was it?
Yeah, Minnesota, I think.
Something like that, yep. So in 1985, Stephen Avery was convicted and found guilty of a rape of a Penny Ann Bernstein.
It was a prominent businesswoman.
So Stephen Avery was arrested for the assault of her. He had local run-ins with the police beforehand, especially with a local sheriff's wife, who was a sister-in-law of his. I think it was his cousin, and that cousin was married to a local sheriff, and he'd run her off the road, and they had a big family dispute. And so, but a rape happened to this poor woman, and Stephen Avery was charged with the rape, put on trial for the rape. Even though he proclaimed his innocence the entire time, he
was convicted.
And given whatever the sentence was, I would assume it would be some sort of life sentence or a very, very long sentence. So he had proclaimed his innocence all these years, and then in 2001, he appealed after several other appeals, looking at the DNA evidence. The DNA evidence in this case was pubic hairs that were found at the scene. One of these hairs was tested and was linked back to another known sexual predator at the time, who had also been arrested in 1995 and possibly had admitted that he had done the original rape in 1985. The DNA proved that Stephen Avery had been innocent, which he had claimed all along. His alibi for that night in 1985 was correct, and that the other suspect, who other officers had kind of said it might be this guy, was actually the guilty party. This man got 20 years off for that rape, really. He wasn't put in prison. And over that time, he had committed several other sexual assaults on women. So, Stephen Avery, wrongly convicted of rape, spent 1985 to 2001, so it's that 18 years, 18 years I think it
18 years,
was,
aye.
altogether. Came forward, and through the way America works, took up legal action against his conviction to get reparations for his conviction.
Get a bit of cash.
Get a bit of cash. This ended up in 2003 with 4 or 5 of the local police officers who at that time had now all been promoted. So, like, you're the head of the police department, the sergeant, all the guys who had originally been in on the framing in the first rape. They were all indicted. The local police insurance said they wouldn't cover any damages for Stephen Avery, which would have meant it came out of the local pot, the community pot, and obviously these guys being sworn in and indicted, or whatever it is, means their jobs were on the line, or their reputations were on the line for this Stephen. The total amount he was suing for was $36 million, I think.
Yep.
That sounds about right. So this was in 2003. Then on, is it? Oh, sorry, that's just trying to get the timeline right. So 2003, he's been released. That'd be 18 years. He starts legal action against Montauk County, Stephen Avery. Then on the 31st, which was Halloween, I'm just trying to get the right year. After being released, so 2 years after being released, after it takes his time to get his lawyers on board, get his case up and running, the local police department and specifically the Sheriff Kenneth Peterson, Sergeant Andrew Colburn, the person who took depositions, it also turned out that Andrew Colburn, I think, took a phone call in 1995 that could have cleared Stephen Avery 8 years earlier. This information was repressed by the police department. So this was all going on in the background in 2005, in October. Then on October 31st, Halloween, a local photographer comes to Stephen Avery's car yard to take photographs of his sister-in-law's car, which he's selling through Auto Trader. She works for Auto Trader. Yep. She then disappears. I'm going on a bit here, I do apologise, but there's a lot of information to take in, which is in a 10-part documentary, so I'll quickly just try and get through this. She disappears, and she is reported missing several days later. Several days later after that, Stephen Avery is a warrant is put out in his place. The police come in, search and stuff like that. A call comes in from 2 eyewitnesses who have found her Jeep on his lot, conveniently. Bones are found in a burn pit. And
his cousin gives a confession.
And then his nephew, Bobby Dacey, he's taken in also, and he gives a confession. So basically they build up a case that Stephen Avery has killed this photographer. Take him to court. The main evidence is Bobby Dacey confesses. The confession you see during the documentary will come back to.
And the blood.
And the
keys found in his bedroom.
So the prosecution make a case. Stephen Avery is then convicted of this crime, along with his nephew. They're both sentenced to life. He's sentenced to life without parole, and his nephew's sentenced to life with look at parole in 40 years or something like that.
And in 2000...
So that's kind of he's been released from prison after 18 years, sues the local county, and then murders this photographer. Then the kind of case starts to unravel. So this is a 10-hour documentary. I'm trying to get through it as fast as I can just so we can talk about it. So if you have watched it, you'll know all about it. If you haven't, try and bear with us. But there are many, many glaring facts that come up within the documentary and within the court case that could seem to prove that Stephen Avery was framed for this murder, and through his framing, he incurred astronomical court costs, because the better you pay for a lawyer, the more lucky you are, the better lawyers you get. So he settles, instead of getting 36 million, he settles for 400,000, which he ends up paying for his lawyer fees. It's and as we speak, at the moment he's still in jail, but he's appealing because of stuff that came up in this documentary. So, Rob, if you'd like to go through some of the stuff that came up, would be.
So the first thing, I don't think the initial Montauk police framed him. I think that they were just kind of lazy.
Is this for the rape?
Aye, for the rape. I think they were just lazy. It was a case of, right, he kind of fits the profile. I don't like him. Boom. That's it over with. You know, it's as if they were just a lazy department.
I think there was malice in the rape conviction, if I'm honest. I think they had the chance to look at other suspects, especially the person who was eventually convicted for that rape.
The guy that was being monitored in that area.
Because he had run his sister and his cousin
there was
off the road. There had been family arguments and stuff like that. He was actually locally known as a bit of a kind of... The whole Avery family is a bit of an outcast family, to be honest. But
they had a scrapyard instead of farmers. That's in the Midwest. And then moving on to the second, the murder. Obviously, the way that they had the investigator, so the lawyer for Brendan Dassey.
Yep.
The lawyer and the investigator were basically working for the prosecution and getting the facts and to get this young lad who wasn't the brightest, wasn't the sharpest, but still kind of fully functioning, getting him to coerce him into making the statements that they wanted. And this is his lawyer. This is the guy that's supposed to be protecting him. I found that quite harrowing, sickening, sad to watch.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So I think the prosecution obviously had a murder case, and their case, they had to obviously build a case for.
That's why I mean about being lazy. I think they basically just said, right, we've got Avery. Everything will just get. So when you're looking for a blue car, you see a blue car, that kind of psychological, right? That's it there. Let's just.
Well, I mean, if you think, I think so. Teresa Halbert is assigned to come and take photographs at the Avery compound. She's meant to be there about 2 o'clock. Stephen Avery phones her a couple of times, possibly leaving voicemails.
So who do you think done it?
Well, I'll quickly go through what the prosecution say happened, then we can dissect that, and then we can come back to that, dude. Because I think the grimness of what the prosecution actually said is very important to what actually did happen. So Teresa Halbert is seen at the Avery residency by Bobby Dassey and Stephen Avery's nephew, the next door neighbour. They see her taking photographs. So they say about 2:30 this happened. Bobby Dassey, Brendan Dassey's dad, leaves his house to go out hunting. About 2:45, he says he still saw the car there. At about 3 o'clock, Scott Tadich, who is the next door neighbour, he arrives home from hospital. He's going out hunting. I think he's going out hunting with Bobby Dassey. Scott leaves and passes Bobby on the highway. So this is about 3 o'clock, they're saying. Brendan Dassey, this is the nephew. He's the key to the prosecution's story. He says he returns back, checks for his mail, heads over to Stephen's residency because he's got a letter for Stephen. When he's approaching his trailer, which is next door, he hears screams. He knocks on the door. Avery comes to the door, sweating and half naked. Avery invites the young Bobby, Brendan Dassey, 16-year-old, into the house, where they sexually assault, physically assault, attempt to kill Teresa Halbert in the bedroom, who's tied up. After this assault's end, they try and slash her throat. They move her throat. They move her from the bedroom in the trailer to the garage, where she's still alive, At this point, Avery takes his rifle, shoots the young girl through the head. They take her body from the garage to a burn pit, where they then have a bonfire, disposing of the bones and stuff like that in this bonfire. Stephen Avery says he was home all day after she left. He was gathering up wood and stuff. He was having a big bonfire. Brendan Dassey says he came home from school, went over to Stephen's, gave him his meal, came back home, played his PlayStation, then went out and helped his uncle gather wood for a fire. Then went back in the house. A couple of times his mum sees him, speaks to him on the phone at 5 o'clock during the time. So that's the two stories that are supposed. That's the story the prosecution say, and the story that the Avery and Brendan Dassey, that's their story. A very, very brutal crime has allegedly occurred. But at the end of the day, these two men are not convicted of that crime. One is, and one isn't, because all that evidence about rape, torture, throat slitting in a bedroom is thrown out of Stephen Avery's case. Also, the burning of the remains and the desecration of the bodies thrown out. But in the other case, that's brought back in. So there's two stories here happening. And the prosecution don't come across at any point that they've got it. And then they obviously have to link Stephen Avery to the case. So they try and link that through DNA evidence, which again brings up a whole shitstorm.
It sure does.
So the pieces of DNA evidence they have is after a second police force out with the Montauk County. I think that's obviously, I'm talking about the police force from where Teresa lives. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm guessing they're first informed of a missing person because she doesn't live in Montauk. So they're really in charge of the case. They're in charge of the missing persons case. So the Montauk County Police say they're not having nothing to do with it because 4 or 5 of their employees, some of them very high up in the police force, are basically under indictment against Stephen Avery because he's suing them. So they say we will not have anything to do with this case. Then, so they link. So they find the girl's key for her car in Stephen Avery's house. Now, to MD, that seems like a slam dunk that he did it. But then you find out it was the sergeant that he is suing finds that key on almost the 6th or 7th attempt at searching a caravan bedroom. He also finds it while he's not being supervised by the other police force. This key has DNA on it. It has Stephen Avery's DNA on it. It does not have Teresa Halbach's DNA. A girl who has had this key for 6 years, her DNA is completely wiped from it. But Stephen Avery's DNA is on it.
Well, that's exactly it. There is a lot of holes in it. So, like, what is who like the main? When I sat and watched that 10 hours,
yep,
a documentary, and you sort of summarised it there, well, a lot of it, but again, some of the questions that for me that still need answered is, I believe that Avery didn't kill. Therefore, who did kill? Because obviously she's dead,
yep,
or we'd assume that she's dead. So who killed her? And obviously from that perspective, why did the obviously they claimed that Avery did, and they were trying to get Avery for it. But if that comes up, then you've got to ask who killed her. Yeah. And I've got some ideas on that.
Well, I think the other piece of DNA evidence that links Stephen Avery to the murder is DNA found in Teresa Halbach's RAV4 Toyota that was found on his compound, and his blood was found within it. This blood has allegedly came from his hand, but again, there's no fingerprints. So they're saying he was wearing gloves when he was cleaning out the car. So that's why there's no fingerprints, but he's obviously took the gloves off to put blood in. Also, the prosecution don't say she was transported at any point within her car, but her blood is found in the back of the car.
Yep.
So you've got to kind of find motive within it. And even after I've watched the documentary and looked online, people are coming out and saying, well, Stephen Avery did have a kind of dodgy past. He'd killed a cat. He'd maybe flashed his sister or cousin or something like that. That's how the first incident happened. He was known as a bit of a weirdo. That's kind of like, again, doesn't he give a motive to go and kill this girl? The bullet that was meant to have killed her was found weeks after the other police force had completely went through that garage, dug up the floorboards, because if anybody who watches Dexter or watches any of those CSI programs know that when blood seeps into cracks in concrete, they can get DNA samples right from out the bottom. Her DNA was not found in any of it, apart from the bullet that was found once again by the Montauk police force, who were not meant to be there, who were not meant to be finding evidence.
I'm not being funny, but did you see that garage? Right?
Yeah.
So if you were shot in that garage, the amount of spray, even if it was just a kind of minor, the least amount of spray that you would get,
yeah,
it would have been on about 100 items.
Yeah.
You know,
and the thing is, they found Avery's DNA and other family members' DNA within the garage. They also found deer blood from, obviously these people go out hunting, they live that lifestyle.
Sorry, I'm getting impatient, because obviously folk, you've watched it, I've watched it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the people who have not
continue
seen it,
to listen.
They've seen it, so what's your theories?
Okay, right, so we'll
Sorry.
That's right, I understand what you're saying, dude. I'm just trying to kind of paint a lovely picture for the listeners. So you need motive. The motive for me would be there's two things happening here. One, there's a murder, and there's been a motive towards that.
There's been a murder.
Well, we shouldn't just laugh, because it is a dead girl, and I don't believe the person who's originally killed her is in prison for the right crime. So she's been killed. There is also another motive, and that is to get Stephen Avery to drop his lawsuit against the local county, or make that lawsuit go away. So it's $36 million, which is a vast amount of money that the Montauk police people cannot afford. They'll all probably go to prison, or they'll lose their jobs, and their reputation will be tarnished. What I think's happened is, sadly, Teresa Halbach has been killed after leaving the Avery property. It may have been some time after. It may have been quite quickly after. I don't know. I don't have enough facts or evidence or kind of theories to see who killed her. I've got a couple, but I'll maybe come back to them. The RAV4 was used to transport her body to a local quarry where it was burned. And at that point it was found by the local police, who never caught the actual murderers, I don't think, and they used that opportunity. They had the body, they had the car, and they had the motive to plant that evidence and the murder and frame Stephen Avery. The damning thing for me is there's a phone call that's played within the court proceedings of the sergeant calling in the missing car. He asked the dispatcher, "Are we still looking for this missing person? Is this the license plate number? Is this a 1995 Toyota?" or whatever he says. I think you might be able to put the link in, or you might remember it a bit better than myself. He has to be seeing that car, because the only information he has got is the license plate.
Yep.
So that's like me. I tell you, Rob, there's a car outside, the license plate numbers. No, I would tell you there's a red car out there.
I agree with you, but the thing is, where is that car when he's reading the license plate?
Well, that's the thing. That's the two things. It's either at the quarry where the body was disposed of, or it's already been moved onto the Avery property.
That's what I think it is.
So either way, I don't think Stephen Avery has moved it there.
Right, so an alternative viewpoint to what you've just said there is
Yeah.
the searchers. So the boyfriend or the ex-boyfriend and the housemate and the various other kind of folks. They're in it in the sense of they find the car, the RAV4, on the property, but they contaminate the evidence, the keys in the ignition, etc., etc., and they rumble about, excited. They call the police, who they had contact with, and he comes out and he goes, "Holy fuck, this is the RAV4." He phones it up to make sure, but then as soon as they make sure, he realises that, holy fuck, these two nincompoops have contaminated the whole thing. They've got their horns on the key, they've got the various things in and about, jumping for joy, and we're not going to convict Stephen Avery with this now that there's multiple points of DNA, etc. The site's been contaminated. So then becomes a conspiracy with AIM and the police to fix what they believe should be there. How it got there, I think it was the cousin who, after the murder, didn't like Stephen anymore, but he went hunting with his buddy, or he went hunting and his buddy was his ally.
This Bobby Dassey, the brother-in-law?
Aye, the brother-in-law. The guy the guy who went hunting.
Yep.
So I believe he done the murder. I don't know why. Like, I don't know what his motive
I think he's been seen in a new light as someone who's battery against women, has had cases against him for that sort of thing.
So he sees her on the property, or he knows that she's coming because... Anyway, he goes hunting. Conveniently, he's off out in the wilderness. He rapes her, beats her up, burns her, and thinks, well, you know, what I've got to do something with this. Well, fantastic, we've got a yard and a burn pit, so take the things there. Automatically, they fucking hate Stephen. And it will all be focused towards him. So it was like a two sides of strangeness. Him kind of plotting against his cousin or his brother-in-law, and then the police finding him in a situation where they have to kind of conspire to provide evidence, because they believe wholeheartedly that the car and everything that's been found on the property, it must have been Stephen Avery, but yet somehow the evidence has been fucked up or contaminated, so they go out their way to make sure that the right evidence is there when it's found the next couple of days. Mm-hmm. But there was the other thing that got me was her phone.
Yeah.
She had been getting phone calls for somebody that she didn't... that she was hanging up on, and and that could be. I think when you watch the thing, there's so many leads, but it's amazing how the American judicial system just cut things out and don't allow things to be said or to be brought up, or they limit things. I found it a very strange system if you want to get to the truth of something. It seemed to be very limiting.
Well, I think it just goes to prove that if you have the money, you are very, very capable of buying the best lawyers or the most intelligent lawyers who are able to plead your case. If you say you're innocent, they will take that as your stance and they will run with that and they will try their best. I mean, the two lawyers Stephen Avery was able to get for his £400,000.
Well, they boys were good.
I mean, they were excellent. Whereas the young boy, his first appointed court lawyer, Brendan Dassey, he was feeding the prosecution information,
and he came across as quite simple.
Yeah, and he was getting his investigator to go through stuff with Brendan Dassey, i.e. draw pictures of how she was murdered and
And feed it to
write
the
this down.
prosecution.
And then once again, that information was fed to the prosecution, which to me seems like the Montauk police force and possibly the DA had to help in the cover-up, and possibly even the judge, which is a scary prospect. You know what I mean? If you're somebody who's been accused of committing a crime, you are innocent, you could have an entire police department against you, trying to frame you.
It was quite
Also the information that he gained after they were able to change the lawyer, because they knew he was up to this stuff, they got a new lawyer, but they were still unable to throw out that information. So the jury got that information anyway, which is just crazy. But then that information wasn't allowed to be used in the other case because they had a different theory for how she was killed in that. So this girl would, well, that's how I read it. She was killed two different ways by these two men at the same time.
Aye.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
So what you're kind of saying to me is you theorise that possibly Bobby Dassey, the brother-in-law, while out hunting, was able to maybe sexually flag this woman down or something, sexually assault her, kill her, put her in the back seat, because in the back, that's where her blood was found. He planted the car, and then when the police officer finds it and calls it in, because we hear that in the court transcripts in the vid,
So it's the
so he's found it,
Aye.
but they take 2 or 3 extra days to clean it up to plant Avery DNA on it.
Aye.
Stephen's DNA.
Aye, so
do they know? So do you still think the police think Stephen Avery did it?
Aye.
They just contaminated the scene.
Aye, so the volunteers, when they were out searching,
Yeah.
they come across the RAV4 on the property with a key in the ignition with the various sort of things, and they check it out, they open the doors, they go inside, they check the key, they put it out, etc, etc. They think maybe they pull the key out because this isn't going anywhere, we've found our vehicle, and they call it in and he checks it.
But that's days after. He calls that in like on the 11th, like 3 or 4 days after she'd been reported. He calls that in, and her car's not found by the 2 people who find it till a couple of days after that.
Her car's found by the woman and her daughter.
Yeah. So they find it in the 12th, and he makes that call on the 11th.
Aye.
So it's a day before.
Aye.
So he's found it before the women find it.
But the woman never found it. It was the 2 boys and the boyfriend and the...
Oh, right, so you're saying...
It was a part of the volunteer party prior. They found it, they called the cop who they've got access with, and then they send that woman and her daughter specifically to the Avery spot with a camcorder. It's a part of the kind of setup of, we've already found it, but we've fucked up and contaminated the thing.
Yeah.
But our man here in the police has confirmed that it is the right car, and he sorted out the kind of evidence so that when it does get picked up, it will all point to fucking Avery. They think that they've contaminated and fucked it for catching the real murderer, who was Stephen Avery. Yeah. So they send her in with a camcorder when they've already seen it.
So I think on the 3rd of November, so that's 4 days after she's been reported missing, or 3 days, obviously we're saying the 1st to the 3rd. That's when Andrew Colburn makes the call to dispatch saying plate number SWH582, and then he says 99 Toyota, which you don't know for just a license plate. You would only know if you were able to see that car. It is then 2 days later that Pamela Strum and her daughter
for sure
are on the so there's been 2 days while that car's sat on that property.
Aye.
So who's told Andrew Coburn that the car's there? The
As I say,
boyfriend.
some of the either the boyfriend or the flatmate, somebody who was a volunteer, who was out looking
Yeah.
as they were doing. Everybody was out. They were following the roads, and it says in the documentary he talked about. We gave the Avery bit a wide berth because we knew who they were and stuff like that. But then they got permission to go and well, that's bullshit.
Why didn't they say? Why are they covering that up? Why are the boyfriend and the brother covering that up? Why are they not just saying we found it in the third?
Well, they're covering it up because they contaminated the evidence. I think I've said that 4 times now, Greg.
So they've put the DNA on it.
They went into the car and poked about, like touched the keys and various other things. And when they've called the police guy, he said to them, "Look, have you been in there?" And they're like, "Yeah, man, we'll fucking hang with the key." And he's like, "You fucked it. You've basically put your DNA all over the fucking key. You've put your DNA all over the seat." And then they've hatched a plan to sterilise it and put the person's who DNA who should be there.
Why would they not just say, we found the car, we were in, cancel their DNA out any search?
Because then they would be...
What seems more plausible to me is that Andrew Coburn finds it 2 days earlier, possibly at the original burn pit, and at this point the mind starts to work a way of getting onto the property and then planting the blood DNA, and then days later planting the key, and then weeks later planting the bullet. That's what I mean. That seems.
I suppose
that seems like an idea to me. That means
because I suppose the difference
is
for me then is that I don't think that they were intentionally being cunts. I think they were genuinely thought that Avery was it. You know what I mean?
Well, the first person, 9 out of 10 times, a murder victim will have known their attacker.
Oh no, for sure.
Will have been intimate, whether it be a family member, a partner, a disgruntled ex-lover. You know, looking over many murder cases throughout the year, you will see that pattern will emerge. I'm sure that's so. The first people you would interview would be close family members, ex-boyfriends, flatmates, and rule those people out. That wasn't done. The reason that wasn't done is because from the third
outset, they thought
they had already started moving evidence towards Stephen Avery, which then reverts back to possibly. So at what point did they start planting evidence? So I think we should maybe. I know
what I'm saying is they weren't planting evidence in the sense they were planting evidence. What I'm saying is they planted evidence to be sure, like they just assume. They had assumed that Stephen Avery was the person who had done it, and then these folk had come along and contaminated the evidence when they had found it. So they don't want to take the chance of Stephen Avery getting off on some technical this, or so they go their way to make sure that the evidence that they believed should be there is there, i.e.
What evidence would that be, dude?
I don't know. But I'm looking at it from that perspective.
I mean, it seems to me that if they found that car,
seeing the whole manner.
So who did they tell? Who did they phoned up Andrew Coburn? They would have told the police force who was in charge of it, and that wasn't the Montauk guys. That was the other guys.
They had communication with a local law enforcement.
I don't know, dude. I
think
it
says that in the documentary.
Let's look at the.
It says that in the documentary.
So let's look at the DNA evidence again concerning the bones in the burn pit. Now, what I gleaned from the documentary was
she was burnt somewhere else.
They could possibly have had 3 burn sites or 3 possible bone distribution sites.
But as it said,
the prosecution say she was burned on site.
They had an incinerator on site. They had a car crusher on site.
Yeah.
So
why would you have been burned somewhere else and then moved there? Why would you have been burned at the quarry where the small bone fragments were found at a burn patch there. They were found in a barrel, which seems convenient to transport burn fragments from a quarry, and then put into the burn pit where Stephen Avery claims he had a bonfire. If she was burned at the quarry, who moved her bones? Because I'm sure a body in the back of
Our brother-in-law.
His brother-in-law.
The one that went hunting.
Right, so why would they not want to just prove that he did it then? Because I'm sure his DNA would have been all over the car.
Because they don't dislike him.
But you're saying, but I don't know. I just think I find it.
No, I'm saying that the police force don't like Stephen Avery, but they have determined, for whatever right or wrong reasons, they've added 2 and 2 and got Stephen Avery, and then when the evidence was maybe have been contaminated, they made sure that it was the evidence that they expected to be there would be there. It was just a again the cousin's timeline and the searcher's timeline was just a sort of coincidence that they meet at the same spot. Anyway, Making a Murderer. Go and check it out if you've not seen it. And
what might be an idea is if I've rambled on there, we've only scratched the surface, I feel, because we've not even talked about Brendan and his case, really. We've just talked about DNA stuff. If people on the Facebook can maybe send us questions regarding it, what we think, we can maybe revisit it.
Facebook, Twitter, you can comment on the website, on the YouTube video. Get your
send us a letter in the post.
Oh, I don't do snail mail, but
but no, I'm very interested. But I think because we're going to talk about social media and stuff like that, maybe just kind of tail end it now with how this case and several other cases that have come out this year and last year, the way social media and the way we consume it has really changed. I mean, it appears to me that the documentarians were there to make a documentary about Stephen Avery and his 18 years of false imprisonment for rape. They just happened to be there for the next 10 years as his murder case happened. So that's how they were able to gain access. So you can see in part sometimes the evolution of digital video within the programme as well at certain points, going from the old TV footage to what they're using to shoot on in 2005 to what they're obviously shooting on now in 2013-14 when they're doing the last round interviews and stuff. That's really interesting. For a kind of geeky media person like myself, you might enjoy that as well. So, but the way I'm saying to you, Rob, go on Netflix or check it out and then you divulge 10 hours of information. I think it's a really cool.
I watched it on my Android TV.
Yeah. And then there's also that last year there was The Jinx was out as well, which was a great programme. Did you feel the 10 hours was a bit too long?
No, I thought it was good. I thought it was good. 10 hours was
a lot of information.
So we're going to fire on to the next subject, Greg.
Yes,
let's cut it there. And if you want to check out Making a Murderer, it's on Netflix. Watch it through and make your comment.
Yep, let us know.
So the next subject is Iceland leading the way, jailing their bankers and their MPs, etc., their political. And I suppose the idea behind this is Iceland's obviously a small country up in the north, and when the 2008 collapse, instead of doing what everyone else done, which was bail out the banks and give the MPs and corporate kind of henchmen leeway to continue and almost a pat on the back for the plunging everybody else into austerity and a downward spiral of poverty.
Yeah.
In Iceland, they wrote a new constitution, which was written by the people of Iceland. They jailed the bankers and politicians and made these people that were responsible for their actions and accountable for their actions. And I think, and the reason I'm interested in this is, like a wee country like Scotland, we had a chance to vote for our independence, to write a new constitution if we had became an independent country, to start looking at life in a different way. And now, I was reading it, the bankers were just about to hit another big crash, so they say. China resolving its debt and America raising its interest rates and this kind of stuff. That it really is the time for people to wake up and say corporate banks create money out of nowhere, which is debt. They don't have anything to back it up, and then they spend it, plunge everything into austerity, and then give themselves a big fat bonus, and we just sit back and do nothing. And I think we need to take a leaf out of Iceland's book and hold them to task, especially here in the UK. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, when we look back on it, obviously the main catalyst for this was the 2009 banking crisis and housing crisis. Started here very nicely with the Northern Rock solvency, the rush on the banks, our government at the time having to step in and basically give the banks money to stay afloat. A lot of people losing their jobs, losing their houses, interest rates and that being frozen. The funny thing is, technically, the banks that we bailed out then became publicly owned banks. They became our banks as taxpayers. But because of the way the system works here, and the last Labour government, and then the Tory Lib Dem coalition, and now the Tory party, let's be honest, big banks and big business pay for these parties. They line the pockets of the people that make decisions to how the system works towards that. So the banks get away scot-free as far as I'm concerned. Unlike, you could say, we could take back the railway service. We've already taken back the banks. But what's going to happen is they're just going to pay back their debt and we're going to give it back to the people who fucked up in the first place. Absolutely crazy situation we're in. The people of Iceland and the way they were able to work through the system, I mean, they had total collapse in their banking system, I think.
No, they had the same collapse that we had. The major difference was, instead of bailing out the bankers like we did, and this idea of, right, we purchased the banks, right, that's fantastic, but the folk at the stop are still getting huge bonuses, except now it's getting paid out of public purse as opposed to private purse. The reality is, we done fuck all. And what I'm getting at is, we have to, as individuals, but also as people who live within communities and who subscribe to the government, have to grow a wee bit of backbone and start to get into politics. And like the Icelandic people did, they took it over. They took over the constitution, they rewrote it, jailed the bankers, and the reality is, on a day-to-day basis in the UK, huge corporations are avoiding tax, and it's almost like what we just discussed with making a murderer. When you've got big wads of cash, you know, the law is different for you. Yep. The way the law works is different for you. You have the best lawyers, you have the best bankers, finance people, you have the best accountants, best tax dodgers, and the poor motherfuckers like us. Oxfam recently released this week that the 1% of the world's population now owns 99%. Like, it used to be like 50-60%, they now own 99%. There's something like 64 people that own, like, all the wealth in the world.
It's hard because I think, as you see, what happened in Iceland should have been revolutionary news throughout the world.
Do you want to know an interesting fact about Iceland? Under 24 years of age, no one believes in God. Under the age of 24, they're all non-religious atheists. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it comes back to the institutions that have been around for many, like the archbishops and the heads of church sitting in the House of Lords. You know what I mean? That's just another part. I mean, I think we need to kind of say that we're no talking about the wee woman that works behind the cashier's desk at the bank. Because I always think when you say stuff like, fucking jail the bankers, fuck them, I always feel sorry for the wee woman who's always just there. Hello, what are you doing today? It's these arseholes who fucking gamble with people's savings and mortgages and come up with get rich schemes that they know in 5 years are going to bust a bubble, and then by that time they'll have moved their money and fucked off. There's all these, I mean, it comes back to me, we're at a point now where when I pay all my bills, I don't go anywhere and pay my bills. Money just comes out my bank account. It's all done electronically. My money goes into my bank account electronically. I'm sure you're the same with whoever cash dealings. We're no longer a barter system society. We're no longer a cash society. We're flickering digits in a page. It becomes, for the people who are making billions and trillions of dollars and are making millions and thousands and deals and minutes and interest and all that, this has no longer became money as in the way people like ourselves see it. Like, I need money to go and buy food. They see it as a game and just digits and marks on a page and on a spreadsheet and on that thing that goes round the Fleet Street and all that stuff. No, Fleet Street. Is it? Where's the big financial places?
Wall Street.
Wall Street, Fleet Street. That's the journalism. You know, it's just a game. It's just a numbers game with these guys now. It's no.
The London Exchange is almost at the end of Fleet Street. So
if you get $65 billion, I mean that's not even a. You can never spend that amount of money.
Ah, you can.
What are you going to buy? I mean, you're going to probably buy a new computer and a big screen TV.
Well, you could buy some serious computers and some serious yachts, but
well, I mean,
the obviously
in reality, the
obviously, but that's the name of the game.
System, the meaning of money is totally different, and I think it's cheap. I mean, it's a kind
of course it's totally different, but the fact of the matter is, they have the power, they have the control, and the system of controlling the media, controlling this, controlling that, has to stop. People have to, at a local level, say, well, if I'm accountable for my tax and paying £2,000, £3,000 a year in tax, £4,000 a year in tax, whatever it is, then so is Google. And if I'm accountable for making a dodgy decision that was based on false information that I knew would bankrupt or would fuck over that other business that I was dealing with, then I get held accountable and I go to jail. So why are they, bankers, no held to the same rule of law? And people need to start questioning why wealth has a different rule of law. And it's always been the way since civilization began. The ruling class, the ruling elite, had a different rule set from the common man. And now, and this brings us into maybe the fifth or the sixth topic about the power to share. We're now living in a unique time where everybody has the ability to communicate instantly. So this is the time, like Iceland leading the way, that people have to stand up and fucking and share their information and share the fact that this isn't acceptable anymore. You're no fucking gambling my money, fucking it over, putting a whole country into fucking a false austerity kind of, well, should you take a big fat bonus? No. You fucked up, you're going to jail. That's right. Let's go number 3.
Number 3,
which is the Writer's Challenge.
Writer's Challenge.
So what challenge?
Well, I'll start this off because I know a man who's been writing a book for I don't know how many years, many years, and I've read the first 4 or 5 chapters, and he's rewriting them again, and he keeps telling me he's writing this book and he'll finish it one day. So, Rob, how's the book coming?
Good.
Good.
15
Excellent.
years. 15 years I've been trying to write a fantasy novel. It's at 60,000 words at the minute. But I think for me, I wrote down a list of things that if I hadn't done before I died, I'd be frustrated. I would be disappointed. So trying
Well,
to
technically, you wouldn't be anything.
aye, because I'd be dead. But what I was trying to do with this exercise is I was trying to prioritise what is important creatively for me to get done. You know, because I have 20 different creative projects, the podcast being one of them, and so the major creative project that I would be kind of pissed off that was, or if I went to heaven and was looking down and was like, oh, I'm so pissed off I never,
Or looking up. Let's not.
or looking up, yes, or if I was reincarnated into a psychic spider, who knows? So it was to finish my book. So now that I've got this kind of motivation, it's my top key creative priority. Then how do you actually set about? Obviously, you need the time, but how do you switch on that? For me, I can sit down and do some Photoshop and make a video, edit some video, make a motion graphic, and sit there for 20 hours and forget to pee, forget to eat, and have no problem at all being creative. But when I sit to write, because I find writing extremely challenging, it's all happening in my head, but the actual writing bit. So it's about discipline, time, discipline, setting things apart. It's like almost, for me, I've had to start getting it, change it from a kind of chore, because it is difficult, into something that's enjoyable, like Photoshop.
Yeah.
But
So what kind of things have you set? What kind of practices have you put in place so that you're writing? I'm not saying every day, but possibly every day, or giving yourself set times where you write. Have you done anything towards that?
well, that's something that was definitely, I'm starting to put into practice. For instance, my martial arts. I train martial arts 3 times a week, and at 8 o'clock on a Monday night, everything stops, and I go and I wrestle with people. So at 8 o'clock on a Monday night, everything stops. So I need to implement the same kind of thing. Can say on a Monday night, at 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock, everything stops, and I go and I switch on the computer and I write. There's no Facebook, there's no conversation, there's no phone calls. There's 2 hours of just writing. So I've now identified that, so I'm going to implement it. And the other problem, or the other writer's challenge that I'm finding, is when you get 60,000 words in, or you get any amount of words in, when you have X amount of characters and they're all now individuals, they all have interweaving stories, etc. I sit back in awe at folk like R.R. Martin or Dan Simmons, Game of Thrones, or the Olympus or Hyperion author Dan Simmons, and think, how the fuck did you weave that story? Like, how did you tie up all the knots, the loose ends? I've got most of my loose ends are happening, but it's amazing, like, how complicated their stories are, and how deep their characters are, and how many dead ends and twists, and it all kind of works. So I think that's like, I've thought about using strings on the wall and like have them in like tying knots as the different characters interact, or using lines on a whiteboard. But I've not come up with a. What about yourself? What kind of challenges you encountered when writing, Greg?
Well, as you know, Rob, I've done the odd wee piece of creative writing.
The odd wee piece, you get about 300 scripts.
So, and to be fair, I would say 297 of them are unfinished. So, well, as I say, I kind of mainly write scripts, and so the process for writing a script is very different to how you write a novel or even a play or whatever. But I'm very, very bad at starting. So there's kind of two. If I need to get myself started, the way I kind of work it is, I will write out bullet points in my mind, the kind of story that I've got in my mind. So say one I'd been working on before Christmas was about a wee girl who's in 1960s Scotland, big Beatles fan, lives in the Outer Hebrides but gets tickets to go and see them in Glasgow. So her mum takes her to Glasgow, but they get late and delayed and they don't meet it. And then at the end, the Beatles rush out the back door and they actually see them and she gets a cloth. So that's kind of like the main idea. And then I'll write out the bullet points and then I'll start opening lines into paragraphs and then working on the characters. And then I'll usually end up writing a page, which is usually just a kind of description of what happens. And then for that page, I'll start working in conversations people have in different scenes. And then I usually do a thing called a spew draft, which you might have heard about, which is where you just start writing. Once you get to the point where you think you can start writing, and you just go both. No spelling mistakes, no spelling corrections. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry, just to get it out your system. Because they say that's a good thing to do. And then once that's there, you can start process of writing again, starting again, and then rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. But for me, getting started is a freaking pain in the arse.
So what did you call that? A spew draft?
If you're writing a script, it may be very hard to write a £200,000, 200,000 word spew draft of a novel. But it's just a case of like a kind of, what I do is like just let my consciousness, just like a stream of consciousness, write down the kind of bullet points that I've worked on in my mind or on my page. So I've got a rough idea.
Oh no, for sure.
And you just take that. So say it's going to be 10 minutes short. So it's going to be about 10 to 11 pages. So just make sure I've got through all the bullet points. I've maybe made the 10 pages, which would be a bonus. And then that's out your system. You've actually worked through what you feel in your mind as a story. Then you can get into the real craft of writing the actual draft.
I'm with you 100%. Actually, that's how I write.
Yeah.
I mean, you call it a spew draft, I call it writing. You know what I mean? You just sit down and write. And what I've found, or one of the biggest challenges of writing, is actually the fact that everything must be rewritten. Everything, that one sentence that makes complete sense to me is actually, 6 pages when you try to explain it to somebody else. So how did that character get from A to B? How did they get there? Who are they? What did they do? What did they look like? What's the environment look like? What are they thinking about? What's their inner world? Da 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 da. And I've hanged it in a sentence, and then you've got to expand it. You've got to, and then obviously that just spews out, as you say, like a spew, and then you've got to rewrite that. And
I'm sure there's a nicer way of saying it.
Oh, that sounds good to me, because it's kind of, it is uncontrollable. It is kind of just fast and fluid, and you get that big explosion, and then it trickles out a wee bit, and then it fires up again, and explodes out again. I like that.
I think we're in a really interesting time where I think it's very capable for everybody on the planet, which obviously probably isn't true, but we're in a definite nurse corner of the world that we live in, a very kind of, quote unquote, developed and westernised and modernised society. Everybody has the ability to be creative. Whether you want to publish your own book, you can do that through ebooks and Amazon and just write it, and then you can self-publish very easily, whereas 10, 15 years ago that was a very hard prospect. You want to make a short film or even just 2-minute YouTube clips, you can do that and get it instantly up there. I think for me that's brilliant, but I think what a lot of people misjudge is that it's great to get that, but a lot of times they're just putting the spew draft up there. They're just letting the creativeness just come out of them. Like, you can usually tell a short film script where it's at and the person who's wrote it. Because if you're writing a full-length feature film, say it's 90 pages long, that's a long amount of writing to kind of get a story in. Because the way a script works is you have to be very basic, but try and not be basic within your descriptions and have your dialogue be very naturalistic, depending on what you're going for. And once you've done 90 pages and you've got to the end, it's very hard, I find, to go back to the beginning and go, right, I need to do that all over again, but better. And you can just tell sometimes people are like, no, I've been creative, I've done this script and let's get it made. And you're like, no, let's go back and see how it should really be. And that, so I think there's a lot of, I think getting the time, as you say, getting the time is a bit of, all these people have got jobs, so for me, trying to find an hour a day to write, either on my lunch for half an hour on the bus up the road, if I can get an hour of writing done, or even reading, research.
It's that bit that you just said there, the whole kind of rewrite, if you like. You've come to a completion or your first draft, and you have to work back through it, rewriting it as you go, expanding on things, reworking things, things that didn't make sense, clarifying things, etc. Like I'm working on a book just now, another book, and it's sitting about 18,000 words, and it's been sitting about 18,000 words finished, or kind of first spew draft finished, for about a month and a half to 2 months now, and it's the dauntingness. It's not even a kind of descriptive, but of taking that and working back through it, because I find that when you work back through it, for me, because I know what I want to say, my mind reads it as what I want to say. I don't a lot of times see the words that are actually written there the way they're written, but it's not until somebody external reads it and says, that sentence doesn't make sense, that entire paragraph doesn't make sense, and then it's like when you see the words, somebody puts up a meme on Facebook and the first letter and the last letter of the word is the correct letters, but the middle's all jumbled, and it's, can you read this? And you scan through it, and you can read it all, because your mind, pardon me, because your mind makes sense of it. And it's almost like that when you're rereading your own stuff. You know what it is, so your mind makes sense of it, if that makes sense. So it's quite hard to sometimes for me anyway, reread and rewrite your stuff. And that's maybe why it took 15 years to write 60,000 words of a fantasy novel.
Well, I do think for our very, very cool orphan listeners out there, try and be creative. If you think, I've got a great wee story, just do it. Because there is, I think, if you look at something like The Martian, which is, I think, up for the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, that was just a guy's ebook he did in the house, and it became this bestseller, and then he got the chance to write the screenplay for the bestseller. That, there's the way, it's very hard to work it, and you have to involve social media to get it to that level, but I would phase everybody to just be creative. Whether you want to act, you want to be an actor, go and do local arm drama. If you want to be a painter, fucking do an evening class of painting. People say, I can never get the time. Well, don't watch an hour of Coronation Street and EastEnders. That's me being slightly facetious, because maybe they like them, maybe they want to write Coronation Street and EastEnders, so they need to. River City, though, that's a good one too.
No, but it's
you know what I mean? Try and find the time, because people say I don't have time. Well, if you might be a mum with 2 kids and you go to their bed at 8 o'clock, to be fair, you'll be fucking knackered probably. But try and find half an hour to do a wee bit of writing, or just a wee bit of doodling or whatever. Just try and be, because it is a great time to be. Because sometimes we and you bemoan the state of the planet, and rightly so, and many things. But it is a really good time to be creative and engage with other creative people on the internet and through Facebook, and join local creative groups and get out there, folks. But yeah, so writing, so spew drafts, try and find an hour a day to do some writing and read other folk stuff, read books. So, yeah, try and find an hour a day to do some writing and read other folk stuff, read books. So, yeah, try and find an hour a day to do some writing and read other folk stuff, read books. So, yeah, try and find an hour a day to do some writing and read other folk stuff, read books. So, screenplays or whatever you want to do.
Quality. So I think there's some good food for thought there for any budding writers and the Writers' Challenge. And I think that advice there with the idea of make the time. Don't use it as an excuse. Make the time and can prioritise what it is you want to do.
And have a wee quick search on the internet, 'cause I think there's a sort of thing that says if you save a penny a day, then 2 pence the next day. One of these stupid meme things, but the end of the day, you'll have 600 quid. But there's things on the internet that says, here's a kind of rough guide to how to write a novel in a year. You know, you do this, you do a first draft, or you do this, you do characters in January, do storyboarding in February. Look on the internet and get ideas and take bits and bobs that work best for you. You know what I mean? It's all out there, folks.
So just got to
Don't let me and Rob fucking get the market of novels and screenplays. You know what I mean?
And podcasts and art and music and
Just get out there as well, and then send us the finder's fee, 5%. Thank you.
Right. So that's the
Cool.
Writers' Challenge. Let's fire on to the new planet or Nibiru.
No.
The new planet that's coming into view, which is in a long elliptical orbit where the gods that created man through genetic manipulation have returned to the inner orbit of the solar system that spawned them.
Finished.
Aye.
Are you sure? So, I believe you were talking about Planet X or Nibiru, as it was called. We've discussed this in the past, Rob, and it's a planet it was very similar to Earth and would come into contact after a certain amount of thousands of years and be in the same, it was in a different orbit.
Yep. A long elliptical orbit.
But I would come into the very, very smart people from University of California, I believe it's Caltech they call it sometimes, is that what they're on?
That's it.
They have been working and observing bodies within the Kuiper Belt, which is where Pluto is. I'm sure that's right.
Just beyond, I think the Kuiper Belt's just beyond Pluto.
Just so.
So it's like the sort of debris belt that's sort of at the edge of our solar system.
And they've found certain objects are orbiting within a certain gravitational pattern, and they seem to be being pulled into a certain spot. So they're theorising that there could be a ninth planet that it goes round the sun, but its orbit is so large and it passes through Kuiper Belt, meaning these objects pass within it, that it takes 20,000 years to go round. So a year on planet 9 would be 20,000 of Earth years. Going through that, they're kind of theorising it's the size of possibly between Earth and Neptune. They say it's probably going to be a very, very cold planet, made up of gases, the same as Neptune. It's a very. It just goes to show the size of our tiny neighbourhood, our little cul-de-sac. That the entire time we've been observing the skies as a species, this thing has maybe went round twice, and it's going to take very highly sophisticated telescopes and radio telescopes to try and pinpoint and find it. If they did find it, it would...
Can I just stop you there? Because the first civilization, or the first recognised civilization of Sumeria, they had it in their star map, their description of the local solar system.
The Planet 9.
Planet X, Nibiru. They had all the planets and this last planet. So...
It's not... But this planet Nibiru, is it no almost went into contact with Earth? Was that not what happened? Is that, I can't remember.
On a long elliptical scale,
aye. So then it would come into the inner solar system. The planet that if you're lucky you're so far away from me, you know how badly you frustrate me sometimes, Wallace. This planet doesn't come into the solar system that close. It goes all the way out and then just goes like it's beyond Pluto, its orbit, as closest it ever gets, and then it goes fucking so far out then back round.
I hear you.
I'm so frustrated because you're just trying to bite me. So I mean that would be. I mean, first of all, we're not saying Nibiru doesn't exist. You know what I mean? We're still waiting for it to return.
I sure am.
I know. Yeah, you've got your calendar and all that set. But this new planet just, for me, it just goes to show the amount we don't even know about our own solar system that we live within, compared to what we don't know about the galaxy that we fucking live in, or the entire universe. It's just really, really, really interesting. And if they're able to find this planet and get a wee picture of it, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? But again, they haven't found, the way the media portrays it is like, ninth planet found, fuck you, Pluto, wow, you dick. This is the way these objects within the Kuiper Belt are orbiting and behaving,
Pluto a planet?
Theorising. In my heart, Pluto is a planet.
But has it been categorised or decategorised?
Well, it has been decategorised as no longer a planet.
So, what was the name of the satellite that had recently took pictures of Pluto?
We talked about it not that long ago.
Challenger, something like this. Yeah, because I wonder if there's any possibility of using it as it's already out there.
Try and rearrange it.
To get, or if the Kepler belt will basically restrict its journey or ability to fly in the direction of the new planet.
Well, I mean, it was the New Horizons probe that was sent out to Pluto.
Aye.
But then again, the kind of math that they're theorising that this planet and its orbit might take, it could be at its furthest point away from Pluto, if you know what I mean. It could be another 10,000 years before it gets within close to the Kuiper Belt, if you know what I mean. They're just, what I've read about it, it just seems like that's kind of where they're going. That this planet could be there, so it might be fucking miles away, and it might take them years to find it, but they are moving towards the theory that this gas planet, very similar to Neptune, is kicking about out there, which is cool.
Right, let's
excellent. Let's move on then. So
cool. So that was that was number 4. Let's fight number 5. Life expectancy and living your dreams. This came about living in the east end of Glasgow. The life expectancy around about 60 years. And obviously retirement's around about 65 or maybe 67, 68, 69 by the time if we get there. So the whole idea of, well, if the life expectancy in your area is shorter than the age of retirement, then when are you supposed to retire and kick back and write your book and etc, etc. So it was kind of what I was saying earlier on in the writer's dream. It's about prioritising. Yeah, and what I done this week was, to say if I died, or again, looking back at the legacy of your life from that perspective, what would you be pissed off that you never done? I.e., be it, say, at the Great Wall of China, or, travel somewhere, or do something creative, or whatever it is, So it was just a quick one on the whole idea of writing down your bucket list, essentially, and trying to make it happen. A lot of people wait for the illusion, everything's an illusion, the illusion of winning the lottery as the thing which is going to allow them to fulfill this bucket list, when if you ever watch any documentaries or are inspired by anybody who's done their bucket list, they never waited for a lottery. They made it happen through, I am going to go to Barbados and swim with the sharks.
Yeah.
And they made that shit happen through, having it as a focus and saying that's my priority. And I suppose it's the same with writing, they made it a focus by saying, no, I'm not watching another episodes of Shite Enders, and I'm going to spend 2 hours writing. That's my priority. So it's just both you pumped on it while you're writing, telling people to get creative. Right, so that's done.
I was just going to say, it's life expectancy thing that's quite shocking that is still a thing that happens within Scotland, and stuff needs to be done towards that. The retirement age going up and up and up is another thing where we've been brought up in this idea that you get to retire at the end of your working life. That's a new concept, fairly new concept, how this sounds. Because I'm guessing in 1850 you didn't get your retirement or any push like that. They had implemented national security they have in America, or a national insurance system we've got here. So
you got death.
You get death, and I think the good hallmark of a society and a kind of forward-thinking society would be if you work to, I think 60, 65 is quite a good cut-off point, that we are able to kind of say, right, fine, you've worked your years. You don't need to work anymore. Work if you want, but you don't need to work anymore. And then we should accommodate through the national insurance money. The whole pension thing is an absolute fucking nightmare. If anybody's working on their pension now, I would suggest take a pension out straight away, because your government pension is no, well, it might cover it because me and Rob through the revolution will sort all that shit out for you. Don't worry about it. But fucking have dreams, be creative, fucking get out there, and just we only have this one life.
As Bill and Ted said, be excellent.
Yes, cool. But yeah, still got a couple more things to go through, man. Let's
right.
Rock on.
Let's so that's 5. So number 6, power of social media and the power to share. So I think if there is going to be a revolution, or if there is going to be fulfilling your creative desires and stuff, one of the greatest tools of our generation, and it's a brand new tool that not a lot of people, it's only been 5-10 years in age, but it's this social media, the internet, and it's the ability it gives you to share your opinion on a political ideology, on your art, your podcast, your book. It gives you the ability to join a group or a forum with other writers or other podcasters or other people your political ideology, or just with your friends or your family distance, and your ability to share a laugh through a video, your ability to share a joke, share a happy experience, a sad experience, to gain as we become more empowered by our information that we read, then we can start to, as we discussed about Iceland, we can start to take on the big powers, because it's the first time in history they've ever had a subservient mass that could actually communicate, talk and share content, the truth, relevant information between themselves, and organise between themselves, and have a centralised organisational system, and be non-fragmented. And it's a new exciting time to be alive, and I think the most important and powerful thing about social media is that power to share. So please share the podcast. See what I done, really? What I done there? Oh.
You plugged there at the end, man. That's class. Have you watched Mr. Robot, sir?
No, I have not. No.
I would put that on your to watch list. It's very good. I'm only in episode 4, but it's about the World Wide Web and how companies use the internet and computers to run their businesses and their affairs and stuff. So I'd watch that, but yeah, the problem you could clearly see arising from that is something like Facebook doesn't exactly work for the populist mass. It uses it. It tailors adverts towards you. It gathers information about where you live, your age, your sex, your preferences towards films, books. Shares your information with many, many companies. I'm assuming 85% of these in Britain are PPI companies because they're always fucking phoning the house. There's that side of it. There is, as 1984 perfectly illustrated, the subservient populace were quite happy to go along with what was told to them through media channels and.
But I think that the difference between 1984 and today is just this ability for the individual to share, and the individual.
Well, what is it they say in the film Men in Black? A person is smart, but a group, the population, can be idiots. You know what I mean? One person can be very smart and very thought-right, but a group sometimes might not be the best.
But here's a prime example. We are a podcast with a theme that everything is an illusion, and the idea that we question everything. So we're using, again, the internet, we're using that power, and we're using this medium to create content, audio content, where hopefully people will listen and share, that hopefully with the idea that people go, oh, I had a different opinion on that, and I'll question that, and I disagree with that, I agree with that, and again, to get conversation, to get people questioning things, which is this idea of the power of share. People, anybody can utilise, same with the writing, people can, as you said, they can write a book and they can self-publish, they can put it as an ebook and get themselves on one of the biggest bookstores on earth. Again, and boom, they're getting their ideas out there. It's a very hard thing to control, and it's the first time in history, I say, that the powers that be can't control everything.
They're trying to.
Oh, aye, you've got to
laws and all that stuff.
The name of the game, you've got to control everything, and especially counterculture, because counterculture is where the radical ideas come from. So you have to control that as well. But that's the beautiful thing about sharing. You can share this information, talk, and who knows what a future society may look like. It might be all Star Trek-y, no money, like a Venus project, technology takes over everything. You can get your hot meals and explore the galaxy in unison, or it could just be a nuclear black cloud. With some people who have stayed in bunkers and have charcoal filters and 3-year supply of spam.
Who doesn't like spam?
Well, if there's nothing else to eat, I'm game for that.
Dog food.
I'm game for a spam fritter.
That's Rob alluding to the fact that he's got a bunker out in the back garden at his flat. It's all coming out now. It's coming out in the wash.
Maybe. I've got a tent.
So use social media. Populate it with cool stuff. I would suggest the first thing you populate it with is this podcast.
Oh, good quality suggestion.
Thank you.
And
cool.
Let's fire on and finish with our last topic of the evening, and somebody who has utilised the share idea of social media, because he's created so much content that people want to share it to in disbelief, ridicule, mockery, etc. But he's using this concept of the share, and this is why he's potentially going to be the next president of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump. What's your thoughts on this wonderful man?
So, this is where we can look at a situation where a man who has failed in business many times but has always made himself back into it. a business magnate, hotels and stuff, Trump Tower, a billionaire, an investor. He wrote a couple of books, as he likes to tell people quite a lot. He was the apprentice guy, You're Fired, in America. We had Alan Sugar, and he's now decided that he is quite capable of running as a candidate for president of the United States as a Republican. He is leading the polls in many of the states he's running in, taking over other Republicans like Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush.
Even in the state of Tulsa, where he spelt the name wrong.
Aye. I mean, this, we've kind of hinted at it a couple. This just goes to show, if you have enough money and enough fucking the man's got enough self-belief to fucking fill a fucking swimming pool. This guy is a right-wing fucking idiot who has, as far as I can see, no concept of the intricacies of fucking political policies, no fucking concept of how to run the business affair. He can run a business, which is fine, but to balance the books in a country, I don't think the guy would have the fucking first clue. International diplomacy, this man has no fucking... He is that pompous within himself because of how he's built himself up. He comes from a rich family. He has always maintained this air of bullshiness, really. He comes across as somebody who would wouldn't fail spectacularly, but would be very aggressive within the international community. He has made several comments towards the Islamic world, the Mexican people on the borders of America. But it just goes to show, if you throw cash and talk the talk or the bullshit and get people on board, then you could possibly be the President of the United States.
Well, I think Donald J. Trump is a very, very clever man. And he heard me out on that ridiculous statement.
Yep.
So first off, there was somebody done a study where they basically said the money that he inherited from his father, if it was put into a bank and just left there, he would have incurred, or it would have basically made more money than what he actually has at the minute through all his business dealings and stuff. So being a businessman, if he'd have just kept that money in the bank, he'd have more cash. He's a crap businessman, but he has got business experience, as they said about Hillary Clinton. He had paid for her to come and speak at one of his events, etc. He says, I'm the guy coming for this side. I've bought them all. I know how the game works. I've put my money in my pocket and said dance, and they've danced, which is how American politics works. Now here's somebody who's coming for the other side. He's about doing deals. He's got that kind of fierce corporate world of, I don't care if it's 10,000 jobs that are lost, sell it. He's got that kind of mentality. He's always got this kind of mentality of, he calls himself the deal maker or something like this. He believes, and quite rightly so, America are getting fucking beat in every quarter by the Chinese in terms of infrastructure, new science, research and development, all the various economic indicators. China is the new empire. China are beating America and will soon take over America, and it'll be the Chinese empire that are kind of policing and ruling the earth. And what he's saying is, no, I'm going to make America great. There is aspects of that which, from some of the other candidates that he and see, obviously this guy's got a background in television, which I think a lot of his bravado and the ability to work the audiences, the social media, etc., comes from. He understands the entertainment game better than a lot of the other politicians. They're politicians. They're interested in political matters. They're interested in, the Constitution and the various kind of political sort of things. Whereas Donald J. Trump isn't too interested in that. He's more into the kind of TV and communications manipulation and how the big players of the business world, the deals he can do with them. So I definitely think he's got a chance. He's in terms of his political perspective, he's back in the dark ages. But
I think his political perspective is anything that's good for Donald J. Trump is the right political perspective. I mean, he is running on the ticket of the Republican Party, which I think is because that's the one he chose at the hat that he wanted to fucking go run. But he could have probably run as a Democrat if he wanted to. He has no.
I'm sure he said
there's no Senate seat. He has no.
I'm sure he said the Republicans would be the easiest to
easier ones to take control of. Probably, it's quite funny to see how he is trying to fit in with the elements of that the ground level elements of that party. These are the Christian right, the Tea Party people, the southern states, where God bless America, Jesus, and
the people.
What I mean?
The
he's
people
trying to appeal to these guys by quoting the Bible. I mean, this man he is an American, New York rich aristocrat, and I find it quite comical how he's trying to blend. I mean, Sarah Palin coming on his bandwagon is just fucking
and
it's scary because
the singing kids.
His fucking politics is going back to the dark ages, and it looks like he might win the Republican race, which means you have to look at the Democratic side of America. I mean, America for me split into two parties: middle right or right right. There's no left, centre left kind of thinking.
Oh, there is.
Apart from possibly Bernie Sanders,
Saying, and Ron Paul has got quite good. But when you're looking at the sort of bigger kind of picture, there's Ron Paul and there's Bernie Sanders that seem to be the two people that have got an inkling of something.
So if Donald Trump wins the nomination and runs
Rand Paul,
right? So who's going to go up against him? The Democrats need to either choose, but it's looking like either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. Now, Hillary Clinton has a long political career. Obviously, she was First Lady, but she has been involved with the Obama administration and has been a senator for all those years. She has very high links to corporate America and has people, and you can tell her funding is coming from traditional ways that Democratic runners were funded. Do you know what I mean? Like
banks and oil companies.
It's like
media companies.
It's like the Republican parties. They're funded by the mad texting guy for The Simpsons. I'm funded by the not so mad banker for New York. You know what I mean? It's very disconcerting, to be honest. But that's because I think me and you.
Well, that's it. The
leftist kind of
Bernie Sanders, his campaign has had more contributions from Joe Bloggs than any other campaign in American history, and most of the campaign fund has been made up by small donations.
Yeah.
And some of the things he said, like one of the quotes I heard, or the bit I heard, and he was talking about, we spend 50% more on healthcare than the people in the UK. But yet they guarantee healthcare to all, and we don't. And he says, well, fundamentally our system's broke. Then we need to look at this, and again, everybody should be able to access free healthcare. And a lot of the things he talked about, like Hillary Clinton getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from Goldman Sachs to deliver talks and stuff, and he says like that's no. It's not acceptable.
Yeah.
So I like, but I think like Trump, as a as
But
a
again, Trump for me is another example of what could possibly seen as the media bias towards extraordinary personalities, and you need to have that sort of personality to win. You know what I mean? And they'll report on everything he says. They will.
I think,
Well,
but
they will lap that shit up, and they will make that the front running story, and he's quite happy to play along with that.
but
Because
the opposite of that, is social media and share. The Donald Trump, the amount of people that are creating videos and photoshops and memes of the most ridiculous things that he says. Like, for instance, recently there was the video of the young lassie singing the American song America, and then somebody put a bit, I think it was for the Shining movie, and the kids cycling down the hallway and opening the door, and then there's these kids singing that song, it went viral. That sort of stuff, which then makes the mainstream have to report more stuff about Ken, because they're in the numbers game, and the numbers are now getting generated by the people. The people are creating content, sharing content, creating opinion, and that's why I think Trump's a clever man. He understands how content is created and shared, because his time in media and his buffoonery. The buffoonery gets people engaged because you can mock it.
You think he's still working in the kind of older business model though of media? If you know what I mean, like he's targeting newspapers and
no, I think
he's not targeting the online.
Oh, he is because he's paying. He personally is not, but he's paying the top people.
Yeah.
He's saying, right, so you're my media man. What is media today? Well, what we're going to do for you, Donald, is we're going to attack the social media on all fronts. We're going to get people creating memes, good and bad, for you. We're going to get in video content shaped up and make it easy access. And they're at the forefront of getting his content created and shared. That's spinning the modern day. Except he's got the finance to be able to pay people to make that stuff, to get the ball rolling, get the snowball on its roll, so that people start sharing it. And good or bad, that means his name is at the forefront of your conversation. Like at the minute, there's Bernie Sanders and Trump are the only two I'm following.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not our country and stuff, but they're the only two I'm following. Like the rest of them, I'd be very hard pressed to hang with their name.
Yeah, I think Hillary's in a kind of unique position, because if take this, imagine this in your head, Rob. If I was a kind of centre Democratic female in America, I mean, your options for a kind of role model of your party are very limited to one person. So she might have I think she's got a large female following who would, if she wasn't in the running, would probably go with Bernie Sanders. But because she is a very powerful and influential woman, I think the Democratic female population may be leaning towards Hillary. Not as a sympathy vote, but as somebody they see as furthering the cause. And I think, America have never had a female president, so I think she'd maybe have that going for her as well. It's about time a female was the president of the United States.
No, totally. I think there's a positive there.
Which is scary when you see Trump.
But I definitely
hooking up with Palin. You know what I mean?
I definitely don't. I think Trump and near enough every other Republican, as well as near enough everybody on the Democratic side, have no real awareness of the middle class, never mind the working class.
Yeah.
And Bernie Sanders seems to be the only one that's talking about middle class issues and some working class issues, but even at that, it's mainly middle class issues. Whereas most of the other candidates are not even aware of the middle classes. They're looking at the upper classes and the elite.
I think what they portray is how they will help working class Americans is with large statements like, we'll reduce oil, or we'll get more jobs, or we'll get more education. They don't actually have a plan. They're just saying the headline, if you know what I mean.
Aye.
Like, I think that's what Trump's doing. I mean, I don't think he's got an educational plan for how his 4 to 8 years of term might run an educational resurgence in the American school system. But he'll sit in a podium and say, yeah, we'll invest in schools and your children are the future. He doesn't fucking mean that. He just wants to get the job. Whereas I think somebody like Bernie Sanders is understanding of the political and economical climate where he can move towards having some sort of plan or agenda within his political scheme to work, something like that. If that makes any sense, did I just ramble on there for too long? I don't know.
No, I think as I was saying as well, like, I think like Trump, he realises we live in it's a media game to be president, to be a top politician. You've got to be more in common with a Big Brother reality contestant than somebody who actually has an interest in helping the people.
Yeah.
And he's played that card pretty well. Right?
I think, to bring it back to our own shows, we had the Commons, the House of Commons this week, debating whether Donald Trump should be allowed into the country, into our country, because of some of the inflammatory. To me, it seemed at first to be like a knee-jerk reaction to a pompous idiot blowing off shite as part of his presidential campaign and making remarks. His remarks about no letting all Muslims should be banned for getting into the country until ISIS is sorted out. His remarks against immigration of Mexicans, how they're all rapists and murderers and bring drugs in. And now, I think through the way we can access the House of Commons, we can put petitions forward, and if we get enough signatures, they have to be debated. So it was ended up being debated. My original thought was, well, if we ban Donald Trump, we're just doing exactly what he says. We're like he says we should ban people for coming in, so we ban him for coming in. We should be bigger than that. We should be saying, come here and debate it with folk, because we'll have folk here to debate it with you. Also, but then on the flip side of that, if that was a hate preacher or somebody trying to get a visa to come in to the country and had said stuff that towards Britain, they would probably refuse the visa by the Home Secretary and the Department, the Home Department. They would refuse them entry, so they wouldn't be allowed in. So I think there was a valid point to actually take it to a Commons discussion. And then again in Scotland, there's an even added layer, because Donald Trump, historically, maybe for the last 10 years, has been in cahoots and worked with the Scottish Government, pumping, let's be honest, millions of pounds into the golfing community. So I always say I'm not a big fan of golf, so I always find it a bit kind of annoying. But what's that called? Holiday tourism, travelling tourism. The travelling tourism community, through his big golf course in Aberdeen, there was a hell of a stink about that. And he's just bought Turnberry, the famous Turnberry golf course down by Girvan, in the west coast of Scotland. So these are £1 million investments that he's been bringing into Scotland, because he thinks it's the home of golf, you know what I mean? Because he likes to play golf. So it's very interesting times.
Just shows you when you've got the cash, yeah. I'll just buy Turnberry. I'll just buy a big bit of,
Aberdeen
coastline, and I'll create a golf course. And if the wee fisherman guy who stayed there for 20 generations on his bit of land that he owns doesn't want to move and doesn't want to be compensated, then we will fuck him over. We will bury him in his fucking place and legal. We'll make his access to his place extremely hard. I've watched quite a bit of the kind of
I
Trump
don't know if
documentaries.
you've got the link for that document. Is it Trumped? It's called. The one with
There's
Aberdeen
a few.
Sheriff.
There's a Facebook group called Tripping Up Trump, which is pretty cool. They post almost daily about various things about the Trump and his connections to Scotland.
Mm-hmm. And I know there was some protests and stuff like that done at Turnberry recently about him. So it's interesting time. But I think even Alex Salmond did come out and says if he's saying these things, then a review should be had about his legitimacy to enter the country and talk. This is a guy who's obviously had meetings with him in the past, you know what I mean? So
I think that a part of what Salmond was saying was obviously Donald Trump plays on a lot of the fact that he's got grandparents are Scottish or great grandparents are Scottish. He's got a Scottish connection and stuff, and obviously Scotland and America, and especially on the east coast of America, has quite a big connection because the Scots were awesome. And Salmond was saying that we don't really want to be associated with somebody with such views because they can have views on the characteristic of folk for Scotland. Folk for Scotland are friendly. They're and examples of the Commonwealth Games, the friendliest city and multicultural, and people are awesome. And I don't want to be associated with kind of fucking hate the Mexican cunts. As Donald J. Trump, that's his kind of taglines. So, Trump for president.
Also just his new post up on the Facebook page, his son out in Africa, game hunting.
Aye, killing.
Fucking dick.
There's no... Obviously, it's a whole other topic. We can get into it another time. The whole meat industry, all that kind of stuff. But game hunting, when you're going out there to kill that thing, and all he's taking is a tail. He's no. I'm a firm believer that if you eat meat, you should be able to kill your own meat. But that's like killing it and then like using every part of that.
Yep.
But he's obviously just trophy hunting because he's got the cash. He can fly there. He can pay for the particular animal to be released at the timing of his, and he goes out there and shoots it, takes a wee trophy, flies home, tells his mates, "Oh, look at me! This is what I done at a weekend." I'm like, "Okay, buddy, nice one." Yeah, funny.
Hey, that was good. We call that a wee.
Call that
I don't know. I mean, have you got time for trailers? Because I know we're running really. We've been great tonight and talking quite a bit, so I haven't spoken a wee well. But have you got any trailers you've seen? I've just got to say the Suicide Squad trailer came out this week. Looks awesome.
I watched that, yep, and there seems to be. I watched the Suicide trailer and I watched a wee bit of Wonder Woman.
I saw the Wonder Woman clips going. DC seem to be doing okay this year, maybe.
It seems to be more serious, slightly darker. I think this is a year for DC to show how comics are actually represented within comic books, and there's a lot of good quality graphic novels that are dark, that are clever, and hopefully DC will bring some of that to the forefront, because a lot of the Marvel movies have been quite kiddish, quite simple, and just about VFX, and it's good to have.
That trailer dropped, as the kids say, this week. I really enjoyed it. So.
It dropped.
Oh, I forgot to JFK and the Sasquatch. I forgot to mention that connection again. We'll come back to that. Don't worry about it, dude.
Get that.
I've got my notes in it, but we'll come back to the notes next time.
Get that in the next episode.
Get that in the next episode, aye. That's fine. Cool.
Well, thanks again.
Sorry. Yes, thanks for having me, man. That was awesome.
Thanks again for coming on, Greg Andrew, Bearded Maester of Sci-Fi, and you can there'll be a link to Greg's Greg's Twitter page, where you can follow his random thoughts throughout the week. Until his next episode of Everything's an Illusion.
Thanks for having me, sir.
If you're listening and you enjoyed, please go onto iTunes or Stitcher Radio or wherever it is you're listening and give us a 5-star rating. Be much appreciated. Check out our sponsors: Rob Wallace Media, Energetic Mind, Health Made Simple. And if you're on the website, please feel free to click away at some of those Google adverts. Yes, which generates about a penny every time you click. Much appreciated. Thank you very much, and until next time, question everything. Everything is an Illusion is brought to you by RobWallaceMedia.com, award-winning media. TheEnergeticMind.com, inspirational, motivational and thought-provoking art. And Health Made Simple. Buy today, change your life forever. healthmadesimple.info. Thank you, and remember, question everything.